That's an excellent question, actually. You know, I think that at the heart of both professions is storytelling, and a deep interest in human beings and their lives. And ideally, that interest is one that is there to create more compassion and connection between human beings across the world. And so, as a journalist, I felt that I didn't feel it was the right form for storytelling personally. I felt very limited. Hiding behind, facts and objectivity, there was things when really things are there's an inherent gray, there's an inherent complicated nature to our lives, and every human being, I believe, has a subjective point of view. So I felt that the news for me was personally too limited in its scope to create a real emotional thread and an arc, and also just because of the time, you don't have as much time as you do in a film, right? In a film, you really get to be with someone and enter their skin and their shoes and see them in different situations. So there's a lot more complexity, and so that's why for me, filmmaking was so much more of a refuge. And I remember, I was a part of a film called The Square, and I remember when we took the film to Sundance, and I was at a screening in Salt Lake City where there's a big Mormon community, and people in the crowd said, I was watching a story on CNN or the New York Times. These are companies I used to work for, and yet I didn't really understand. And so I was like, see, this was what film can do. It can allow someone from a different background to really empathize and see themselves in someone who in the news feels very alien and foreign. I was actually on the scene in France.
You were there.
Yeah, when no. Get this. Shortly after the bomb went off, I was there. And I
Oh,
was Yeah, and I reported for
yes.
Vice News on air.
Wow.
Hasna was the first female suicide bomber,
Yeah.
which turned out to be fake news. Every single news network had reported this because that's what the police had communicated to all the journalists. And then a few days later, they returned and said, "Oh no, this was a mistake." After surveying the apartment and the balcony, it could not have been her who set off the bomb. Someone
Mhm.
else in the apartment. And so I felt very conflicted about how I had perpetuated a fake news headline about a woman, especially
Yeah.
seeing how in the neighborhood all the women who are Muslim and visibly Muslim, let's say they wear the hijab or something, were so terrified about their position in France after this woman had set off this bomb in the name of their identity. And like they're like, this girl, what we hear of her, what we know of her, she was not really like a practicing or Muslim. She wasn't really part of our community. And then all of a sudden she represents all of us, and we're dangerous. So I went and I found Hasna's mother. I found her family, and her mother turned away every single news camera and every journalist, and the only person she really let in to go on this journey of hearing the story and spending time, and it was me. And I really, it's quite tragic, but also like I have a lot of I'm very grateful that she let me in. It's because I think she felt like I reminded her of her daughter.
Mm.
You know, we are around the same age. She would always tell me like, you laugh like Hasna. You walk like her. And she felt she had abandoned Hasna. So there was a sense of catharsis. And she sent me this picture. She showed me a picture of Hasna as a child,
Yeah.
and she said, "This is my daughter.
Mm.
Not the girl on the news."
Yeah.
And my heart broke because I was like, "Wow, like." She looks so sweet and innocent, just a child.
Yeah.
How does that child, grow up to wanna to feel so disenfranchised? I was like, "How does that happen?" What it took really? It took time and trust.
Yeah.
You can't, over time you reveal who you are. I mean, you can only pretend for so long, and then, you know, with time, people see you in different situations and they realize that what you're saying is true, you know, and you continue to show up. And so I genuinely was not coming like a vulture to take something from them that was sensational and put it on the screen. It took me over 6 years to make this film, you know? So there was so much time involved and so much, you know, and I was interested in things that were not sensational. I was interested in like the details of her childhood. Big difference. Her mom sometimes was confused. She's like, "Why do you want to know this?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, why do you want to see the dress that they wore as children? Like, it was different kinds, you know. And I think on a fundamental level, also, like, so I think she understood that as a woman coming, who I'm Egyptian, you know, and I'm Muslim, but I grew up in the West. So I understand the Arab Muslim side because it feels familiar. I don't, but I'm not French, so there was space for me to learn. You know, there was space for me to try to understand. I didn't come in just knowing everything. I think if I was French, I probably wouldn't want to make this story.
No, no,
You
no.
know?
I'm
It would
sure.
be too close to me.
Yeah.
Like I know the whole thing, and there's nothing to learn or to experience, you know. But because there's a point of familiarity and also a distance, there was space for me to really learn, and I think that was important, you know, because there's humility in that, you know. It was difficult. It was, you know, I think anything worthwhile is difficult.
Yeah.
You know, that's you know, if it's really an experience that can be transformative for you and for other people, it takes so much time and energy to create and to protect, you know. And I think this film, because of its subject matter, it was difficult from its inception, you know, because and I think, like, I've always been interested in going, for whatever reason, into going to into, and maybe this is my journalist background, and going into spaces where where there's darkness, and like trying to bring like a candle or like transform it into a light. Try to see how we can like turn something that's ugly into something that we can actually look at, you know, and that we can't just dismiss the things that we're ashamed of, or that are ugly, or that are that are too painful. We actually, that's the most important thing to look at within ourselves and within other people, because when we do, then things begin to shift, and there's an opening for a change, you know, and you realize, wow, it's not as terrifying as I thought. There's a way to break this down, and there's a way to create, and what you also understand is that someone like Hasna and the many people like her, that's the thing, this film is not made just to create compassion for Hasna. It's to understand how this happens, because guess what, unfortunately there are so many people who are disenfranchised, young people who are on the edge of being like, well, I'm going to find belonging, community, and purpose through something that's radical. And it doesn't have to be a pseudo Islamic group. It can even be like, I'm here now in California, joining a gang culture, you know what I mean? Or like joining a far right extremist group. Like it's a whole spectrum, but it's at the core of it, it's the same psychology. It's like looking for purpose, identity, and what is kind of sad. It's like usually people who have experienced a lot of violence in their life. So they're like, I have courage. I've seen violence, I know violence, and I can be on the front line, you know, I can give my life away, you know, and in this case, what's even more criminal is that, you know, someone like Hasna is like convinced that like by joining this kind of group, that this is a way to become good, for
Yeah.
redemption. And that's what's the most messed up part for me, is this, is that's the most criminal part, that these people brainwash them saying, oh, you have so much self-loathing because of people you've let down in your life, the thing, the way you haven't had respect for your body, or come, you'll be
Yeah.
washed anew like a new baby, and you'll be forgiven. This
Yeah.
is your way to be a good girl, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what's so sad for me, you know. But what's also an opportunity in Hasna's life, you know, is that like you see at the end that she wants to leave, that she realized this is actually a nightmare, you know. So I think, but it was too late, yeah, especially people who we don't know,
Yes.
people who we misunderstand, or people who we dismiss. Absolutely, I think the whole like for me, opportunity and joy of filmmaking is being able to enter different worlds that we don't know actually much about, and maybe we've judged these worlds and we think we know them, but we don't actually,
Yeah.
at all. And what's happening on the outside is very different than what's happening on the inside, and you can only understand that by spending time with the person and feeling that there's this disconnect, and like with Hasna, you see her as like, it was important for me to show her as different women, to show that actually she's every woman, she's
Yeah.
she's struggling just like any woman with like core universal needs, which is to feel loved, to feel appreciated, to feel a sense of home and human connection. Like all women and all humanity, really, we need that, like oxygen. Human connection is so necessary for us. And when you don't have a strong sense of self, you learn how to kind of shapeshift or dissociate into someone else in order to get connection. And there's a price to that. The more and more you do that, the more fragile you are, and you can do things that are dangerous, actually,
Yeah.
towards yourself and towards others. And you can be brainwashed more easily because there is nothing solid inside, which is scary.
That's true.
But we all have, I believe, different versions of ourselves, different faces. Even it's fascinating how the same person, in different situations, their face will change so dramatically. It's almost like they're a different person. It's like another side of them comes out. It's even the quality of what's in the eyes. And so, and it could feel like, oh, I don't know who that person is. I don't even recognize them. And so I want an audience to experience that. And it's also crazy because, like, no matter how much time I spent with a real family, I never actually met Hasna. So she
No.
remains a mystery to me. And so
Mm.
I wanted to maintain that like element that she could be anyone. For me, the most important thing is that this film like leaves people with a softer heart somehow.
Yeah.
I think that, like, whenever we think we know all the answers and we're angry, our heart hardens and we're like, you know, that person is to blame, and that person's not a good person. And it could be a person, it can be a community, right? Or it can be a family member, like a mother, a father, whoever, someone like that, that's a bad person. They've hurt me, and and we don't gain anything from being in that space of just like anger and judgment and thinking we know all the answers. There's no opening for anything to change. And actually, we're the ones who suffer the most by carrying that kind of anger towards someone. It's like I want people to, like, by the end of this film, for their hearts to soften, to realize that, like, wow, the person who I'm blaming or the community that I'm blaming, they're more similar to me than I would have liked to think. And that no one, things are complicated. They're not so black and white. Like, this film is not to say that Hassan is innocent. She's not innocent. She was, curious and interested in this group that is radical, absolutely. But it's much more, I think, interesting and important for us to understand why. I just feel there's so much increased fragility, in the world, with the pandemic, with the instability in Ukraine, the instability or the war that's happening in lots of other countries across the world, and that what's on the horizon is that there will be more human displacement. You know what I mean? And we have really only two choices, which is like fear of the other or a way to try to understand them, because it's coming kind of no matter what, in my opinion. I feel like we have 83 million displaced people today around the world, and it's only
Yes.
going to increase. And I don't know what that looks for the future. It is like even saying it, I get anxiety kind of, but like, but I do know that right now we can, there are like, either we can have a clash of civilizations mentality, which is there's a lot of interest in like supporting that, or we can find a way to understand each other irrespective of religion or race or age, but just to find a human thread for the sake of this human fabric, to like find a way to stay together. And so these films for me is a way to continue to show that there's a way for us to find each other, and it's necessary. You know, it's life and death, really, you know? Actually, it's funny because my work as a journalist previously, even to this film, it was always about, there was a lot of pain and human suffering, you know, and violence. And so I'm very used to those kinds of conditions, you know, and trauma. And I'm like, you know, maybe I do something that's not so sad.
Totally different.
For once, maybe I find like, for me, like maybe it's about finding like the like depth, but maybe like through comedy or something, you know, because I actually feel like in many ways comedy is the highest art form, because you can get a lot of messages across through while getting people to laugh because they don't have their guard up, you know.
Yes.
And they're laughing and their brain is like, wait, am I really laughing at this? And it's causing them another kind of discomfort or another kind of reflection. And so I feel like I want to keep growing as an artist, and I want to work in different kinds of genres, and but that it's the same mission, which is to get people to reflect and to find unity. Thank you, and all my love to the audience. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the film, and I hope I can come to Holland for the next one.